Hopefully it's not going to completely mess my machine up. Right, okay, that seems to be recording. Recording levels are fine. Excellent. Right.
Is that sound only,
Yes. No, sound only. Um, Someone on the second COA forums suggested I do these as podcasts as well. This particular one I actually did as at Artemis Gathering last summer, so they probably missed that one. I had quite a crammed tent. Right, okay, whether we've got... Oh, we've got more incoming. Okay, here comes Wave.
Hello, Wave.
Righty ho. Alright, okay, I need to give someone a TP. Right, okay. Oh, righty ho. We have... Okay, I wonder if Cynthia's going to be coming along. Hello, Jen. Right, okay. Right, a couple of more minutes. I've got a few more that look like they're coming. So, no hold music, so I shall... I shall, just natter, as I tend to do, as those who know me will... Okay, okay. Oh, good old group chat, so laggy. Right, let's see, shall we make a start? We shall make a start, I think. This is a big one. Okay. Right, hopefully you can all hear me. No one? Who? Good, good. I should say, who can't hear me? That would be good. Okay, right, I think that's everybody. Right, okay. If we can keep any microphones off for the moment until I've cleared the podcast recording, that would be very helpful, please. Or if you've got any questions, as usual, throw them in local chat, and I will be... Oh, great, group chat's just kicked me. Oh well, stuff you. Oh, and I got it back again. Okay, not that I can... Ah, no, group chat's screwed. Okay, I'll ignore that then. Brilliant. Where was I? Oh yes, local chat for messages if you've got any questions. Excellent, thank you. My Batgirl. Um, Batman and Robin. You probably wouldn't like the Robin. Okay. Is your mic? Your mic keeps popping on. Black Widow, eh? Ah, right. Uh, okay. Right. Where was I? Steel. Yeah. You see, 10 past. By the time I've done the intro, we're ready. So, any messages in local? Oh, go away, group chat. I know it's broken. Okay, so yeah, messages in local chat. I can hear you typing, and I'll stop. Any questions? I don't care. Throw them in, even if they're not directly. If they're not directly connected with the session. Stuff them at the end, just so I don't. Otherwise, I'm going to have to do a lot more editing for the podcast. Which, you could like to make some more work for me. It's not a problem. Okay, so we'll make a start then. And action. Welcome to this session. It's on thought forms, familiars, and spirit helpers. This one was actually the shorter version. Was done for the real life Artemis Gathering last year, and I've just tacked this on the end of this series. This is session 10. We have one more session, which is a brand new one on healing in 2 weeks, which will be my talk at the real life Artemis Gathering in August. So you get to hear it here first. If my calculations of the date are right, it'll be June, so you'll be lucky there. Get to try it out as well. Should be fun. So this particular session is... Oh, actually, why don't I just do a quick intro on my path, just so it makes sense for some of you who have not been here. So that's probably a couple there. I'm Kia. Here on Second Life, I have the same nickname on the Children of Artemis forum, and I have my website, which is on the notes, kiahiki at .me.co.uk. I can't even remember my website then. And on Facebook too, and on Twitter. I'm everywhere. I'm everywhere because I do these because my goddess Saudket, an Egyptian scorpion goddess of healing and protection, has been with me since I was very little, and over the last 20-30 years she has guided me through and trained me, and it's her task now she set me to come and talk about my experiences and pass on any kind of clues that I can tweak from my experiences with her. I'm a regular speaker at the real life Witchfest Children of Artemis events, the Artemis Gathering in the summer and the Witchfest in November. Those of you in the UK who are lucky enough to come along, you know that. How have I got a... Okay, I think we've got an incoming, so someone can pop that one up, I think. Okay, I'm not sure if they want TP, let me just sling out a TP. Okay, so, my goddesses of healing and protection, I practice pretty much non-physical working, i.e. everything I tend to do is towards visualization and astral magic, astral projection, those kind of things. Let's just say welcome. We need to get someone sorted. I'll be putting a break on the recording. Hang on. Okay, let's just see whether... Okay, voice is on. Good. Okay. Right. Hopefully you can hear. If you can. Oh, we got 2 thumbs up. Yes, no, come on. Probably. I hear typing. No. Okay, not sure. I can't. Okay. Probably. I would hope so. Anyway. Right, where was I? Oh, yes. So, the general theme for most of my classes is pro visualization and astral working. Of late, I have started to veer towards a little bit of physical working, but it's not that common for me. So, in this particular session, the main topic is something that is pretty much, for me, solely astral working, and that's thought forms. Okay, has anybody experienced the use of thought forms? Slap into local text if you feel the need to share. You don't have to. But for me, these are fairly fundamental things. But back to the text, I will just run down some of the things that we're going to be doing. So, today, if we get time, it's a very long piece of text. I got three spirit helpers that okay, someone else is coming. Three spirit forms that I class as a form of helper. Thought forms, which is the bulk of this talk, and it's something I practice frequently. Familiars. Now, as I say, mine tends to be more towards astral magic and so on. I will cover a variety of forms that familiars take, and then if time permitting, I will go on to just general spirit helpers. Now, there is obviously a fourth form of helper, and that's calling on divine guidance. Now, most of us are hopefully familiar with that kind of approach. It's fundamental to mine. I frequently interact with my goddess, and we natter all the time about things. Now, I'm not going to cover those because that is a completely different topic entirely. These particular three forms, thought forms, familiars, and other spirit helpers, I'm going to concentrate on those because for some they sort of appear as a lower class of help. It's a bit of a condescending phrase to use for these forms. They are in some cases quite evolved spirits, but they are not a divine being, which is a whole separate level. Now, and I would class these three as helpers for just day to day. Okay, for me, my goddess is with me all the time and she helps me day to day, but for a variety of people's approaches to their path, these familiars, thought forms familiars and so on, are a very closer feel to them for many. So that's the focus. Now, thought forms. Welcome, Lily. Hopefully you can hear me. Are you able to hear me? Okay, you had voice on earlier, so hopefully you can hear me. Okay, cool. Excellent. Brilliant. Okay, Lily. Yep. Yes, no, yep. Okay, right. We're gonna jump straight in then. Its time is a ticking. Okay. So, thought forms. Okay. You know that has now just been recorded on the podcast. I might have to use that. No worries. So any silly noises will probably get edited, but we'll see if I like it. It adds to the excitement of a real life lecture of some kind. Okay, back to the serious text. So, thought forms. This form of helper is traditionally an entity created by the will of the magician, for want of a better word, to aid them in a specific task. Now, the reasons for doing so are varied, are very personal. for each person, but usually it's to do with the task requires distance or time or an element of danger that the caster does not want to put themselves through. Sometimes it's also to locate things. Pretty much any. Some people call them servitors, so that's possibly a better clue to the kind of thing that they get used to. They are a servant. Not quite a Dobby the house elf, but it's not far off, unless you make it corporal. So, corporeal, that's the word. So, usually, traditionally, the use of thought forms were short-lived, short duration tasks, fairly menial one-offs. Now, the magician tends to achieves this through a set of processes. Now, I've had a few various books on the topic. I'm not sure if I throw them actually into the text, but if anybody wants them, I can throw them out at the end. I should have them somewhere. Now, the one particular book I have, and I'll use that as an example. It's not the method I use, and I'll come back to my particular methods as we go. This particular book, actually, I'll go get it. Hang on, it's only over here. Okay, right. Yes, I know. I was just getting a book. Here it's called. It's called. Strangely enough, creating. Okay, let's put the book down. I can use two hands then. Cool entities. Yep, creating magical entities. Obvious. By David Michael Cunningham. It's not too bad. Oh, Joy wants TP to class. Well, no. Amazingly, it actually works. I think. Did I offer that? I think I've got it. Yeah, she's pleading now. Right, okay. Yes, so this particular book does structure the creation of a thought form, not quite in the way that I would do it. But in some ways the elements are actually useful, and it's a good way to explain them. And it's fairly common to most spell casting approaches that I would have, but I don't use them for thought forms. First is you create your intent. What is the purpose of the use of the thought form? That's just simple as what do you want it to do. The book does say try and keep it simple, and I would definitely agree. You need to keep the whole thing. You don't want it to go out and do your shopping for you. You want it to go and just do something quite simple and specific. Then you create. The book says create some names for it. I tend not to actually give it a name, if generally. Then we have the creation of it. This book, again, it's not something I use. It creates a personality for it, which I think if you were in a group working, it's ideal. The whole point of thought forms is because, as I say, they're extension of the magician's will. You generally would. Oh, has she not turned up yet? The whole point of. I've just lost my thread. Just doing this. not uncommon in one of my sessions. Where was I? Oh yes, group work. Um, if because thought forms are an extension of the magician's will, it's a good idea that if you are in a group, you combine the will. Now, my goddess really hates me saying this, and I can feel her brewing now because she knows the response I'm going for. Welcome, Joy. Um, Now, what's okay? Cool. Thank you. Um, what was I saying? Da 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 da. Yes, group. I'm frazzled today. It's been a busy day. Um, messages. Okay, right. Stuff that. I'll come back to that. Okay, I'll stick to the text. Ad-libbing is not a good move with my frazzled head today. Okay, we'll go with the text. Okay, so the magician achieves this with the will of the creation via the creation of the entity with a well-defined set of constraints. Now, this is twofold. The will, you creating your intent, so you're focused on a specific task, and the will is also focused into so that the manifest form knows what it needs to do. The second constraint, as well as defining the entity's purpose, also limits its self-awareness, and this is really important. And I've experienced this on a variety of things. Thought forms are simple things, very simple creatures, and like with spells and wishing, they take a literal response to your intent. So, when you are creating your intent, you need to be very specific and simple so that there is no room for maneuver by this spirit or entity or whatever you want to call it, that it can deviate in any way from its task, because it will it'll either take a literal response or it will try and break it, depending on if it's a simple creature that you created or if it's an established thought form, and I'll come back to those little creatures later. So you need to word the request like, I haven't got an example handy. I'll come back to the examples if it comes to me. So, keeping the intent simple and limiting its constraining its features. With that part of it, the issue comes from, it sort of goes hand in hand with the intent. You say, I want it to go and retrieve some information, let's use that as an example, from some point. I want to know whether a book has been taken off a shelf somewhere. We'll use that. That's a good one. So, my intent would be, I need to know whether a book, like Wizard of Oz, has been taken off a bookshelf at that location. Now, that should be fairly succinct. I think there shouldn't be any room for ambiguity there. I'm saying it's a location, it's a particular book, and a particular thing I need to check. Okay, I think I'm done okay with that. That should be fine. Now, the other side of this is giving the entity a limit. It's very important. What sometimes happens, and that book, that Cunningham book I mentioned, he mentions about the use of not having them as a single-use entity. Generally, I would create, use, and then destroy. But for him, he says the use of multiple uses from the same creature. You put a lot of intent into it, which is fair enough. You don't want to just totally destroy it afterwards. But the danger comes there, and he mentions this, and so it's good that he did, that over time these creatures could, with age, evolve. their intelligence, their response. Yeah, thought forms. That's they grow in experience if they hang around. And if they hang around not doing anything, they'll find something to do, and sometimes they'll try and break away to do it. Now, oh, this is it. This is what I was coming back to, was what my goddess was getting a bit upset about. Now, you could say, and this is probably a contentious issue, but divine beings, gods, goddesses, are group thought forms. They were created by a group of people who had a particular belief. Say, a tree is magical to them. They focus their thought on that tree is wonderful for us and it is important, and they sort of amorphify that tree into a divine being as the spirit of the tree, and then they worship that spirit. That spirit is their result of their thought, their energy, and that thought form becomes over time a god or goddess. That's one way to look at the divine, but it does show that group thought forms can be quite powerful if that's obviously a true thing to accept. Now, and this is the other side, and a good example of why you shouldn't let a thought form loose for any length of time uncontrolled, because that thing could evolve power and gain strength from people's desire, good intent to start with, but the odd dodgy one pops in, starts to turn it bad, and then it becomes nasty and uncontrollable, and it starts hurting people. So these kind of things are powerful. So you need to keep that in mind all the time with thought forms. That's why I prefer single use, disposal, job done. Now, the whole creation. Well, okay, we'll get back to the creation side. You have I have my example of my thought form. I wanted to go and get this book. Well, go and check that the book has been removed. What do I do next? I won't do what the book says and give it a name, because that's not. It's a single use. Why should I give it identity? That only fuels its need to be independent or to think that it's a existing creature. It's not a sentient being. It's an extension of my own energy, my own will. Over time it could develop sentience, but the whole point is we don't want that. We want it to come and go. So I won't give it a name. I will say I want a thought form, an entity, to go and do this job. I would then go along the lines of, well, how do I get it out of me to do this? A variety of methods. Some methods, and it's a similar one I use for healing too. I don't tend to use this particular method anymore for thought forms. I'll come back to my thought form use as we go. But in general, what I remember doing early on as a part of the healing process and thought form use was create a chair, place a physical chair in front of me, and imagine a form in front of me, and it's sort of coming from me, and it's solidifying in front of me. That's my thought form. You don't have to give it form. You could just make it a blob, like in Second Life. You turn up your white blob floating in the air. It doesn't matter, as long as it's a point of consciousness of your extension of your own consciousness. It doesn't have to have form. It's there in front. But as a means of directing it, then I'd sort of stick it in front of me in this chair. Now, then I would pass my intent, which it probably would have been done anyway, as it's an extension of my own energy, my own self. Then it already has that intent because it's connected to me. So I would then just bid it to go off and do the job. That's sort of a fairly common process for thought form creation and dispatch. Now, once it's gone off, I could be off doing other things. Um, you could still be meditating and relaying the information back. Now, how you get information back from your thought form is all part of the design process. Now, in this case, I would probably just, it's a simple, has the book been removed? That's a nice yes, no. So for that, I would probably go for simple, because I want my thought form to be simple. I don't want to tell it to go off, look, come back and tell me or communicate somehow to me that it's done its job. So in this case, I would probably go along of, once you're there, just signal a sort of emotional signal, a good feel or a bad feel. A good feel if the book is still there, because I don't want them to take it, and a bad feel if the book has gone. And then I would, once it's reached its destination, looked, done its job, I would get that sensation back. For more complex things, imagery, through visualization, through however you want to communicate, if you want it to come back and give you a feeling or something, or move something, that's possible. It's all part of the programming of the entity, and it's at this before it goes is how you do it. You tell it, that's what you need to do. I want you to do this. I want you to communicate it in this way. As I said earlier, keep it as simple as possible. If you have to do more than one, do more than one. It only just takes time to do. It's not, hopefully, not a painful process. Now, this comes back to then, once it has returned, what do we do? The book goes along the lines of destruction. When they were talking about using group form, they will house it in an item, in a block or something, then it lives in there when it's not in use. I've never used that method. As I say, I tend to destroy them once they're done. So on return, or once the job's done, I would just say, be gone. Just any kind of banishing that you want to try, just so that you'll get your energy back that you expended in the creation of the thought form. Now, as I said, the thought form is an extension of your will and your energy. Now, this could suggest that the link is there all the time. What happens if that entity is oh, cool. Yeah, that's mentioned in this book, the Creating Magical Entities by David Cunningham. Yeah, geodes are fine. As I don't work in groups, I tend not to need storage and so on and so forth. So, where was I again? I've lost the thread again. Yay. Oh yes, I was. No. I'm not sure if it was that Cunningham. Is it? I thought it was Scott Cunningham is the general one, but this is a Michael Cunningham. Yes, Risk. That's it. This is it. There's another book I haven't yet to read. It's called, strangely enough, Magical Thought Forms, and that's by Dolores Ashcroft Nowicki. I probably pronounced that completely wrong. Yes, okay. Risk with thought forms. Now, as this entity is an extension of your own will, you could feel that you are exposing yourself to an attack, or that if the thought form is detected at the other end, could that be used against you to cause you damage because you've just extended out. I've not experienced those issues. I've not gone into any dangerous environment where thought form could be attacked or damaged. There are, I can't remember what's in this Cunningham book on that subject. I would say you could probably attempt to use any kind of protective magic that you would do personally. It's your own energy. You could probably layer something on. I would just try, see what happens. And of course, if you that you are sort of disconnected it to some extent, so you could probably put extra protection around yourself to protect any damage that it may occur for it. Risk-wise, generally, I've not experienced any. The only risk that I would say is because of the uncontrollable aspect of these things, and that the need is to destroy them after use, but that's my own personal experience. I may as well mention about how I tend to use them now. Early on, I would use those particular methods that I've just explained. Now, I tend to use a slightly different way, and to me, it's more effective. I don't know, I think it was about 15 years ago, I found that my goddess has certain servants, and it seems to be fairly common to my Egyptian path, that deities would have a set of servants. Sobek has arrows for some bizarre reason. Isis will have several several serpents around her. My goddess has several scorpions, seeing she's a scorpion goddess. Now, we have a devotee of Isis here. I shall be good. So my goddess I found has these several scorpions that she uses. In fact, there's a... No, I'll come back to that in a minute, because that's part of the story. So I discovered these, and it took me quite a long time to find them. I have their names, and what I understand of their nature is that as I said earlier about the divine beings I interpret sometimes, depending on context, that divine beings are group thought forms. Now, I've stepped back a bit and say that these servants that I use are group thought forms, but slightly to a lesser degree, because they are subservient to the goddess, as I am. So I'm sort of, I would say, I will be cheeky and say that I'm level with these thought forms. They are slightly more evolved than I am. They are older. They are created by her. So they are powerful thought forms in their own right. Now, when I discovered their use, their existence, I set about looking for their use. And I found one, and it's in a classic piece of Egyptian literature called The Lament of Isis and Nephthys. In that story, it's about Isis's son Horus. In fact, it's my goddess gets tricked into stinging Horus with a scorpion, and he's obviously very ill because of the sting, while he's out in some marshland. Isis goes to his rescue, and she encounters this marsh, and it is really foul place. So don't know why he was lurking there, but he was. I think he was lured there and tricked, which is why my goddess was tricked into stinging him by Set. I think it's all part of the contendings of Horus. So the story is that Isis is on the edge of this marsh. She wants to get to her son rapidly. Even though she's a powerful goddess, she still feels the need for help. So she summons the scorpions of Selket. I would probably imagine on the uh, because my goddess screwed up. She's paying her back. Um, Now, what happens here? And I'm not entirely certain about the Golden Dawn, but this has elements of the lesser banishing rites, lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram, because Isis summons these seven goddesses, seven scorpion thought forms. Now, I'll sling the just for the. Well, actually, no, I won't put them in the text. She calls Tofun, Bofun before me, Tofun and Bofun before me, two ahead. Mestet, Mesetatef beside me, either side. Potet, Thotet, Maatet behind me, which is very, yeah, it's very familiar for the archangel part of the lesser banishing ritual. Um, but Isis is summoning those. But this is the other interesting thing: she's using them while moving. So she's not standing still. She wants them as protection through the marsh. Possible. I know they have heavily. I know Golden Dawn had heavy influence from all the Egyptian texts. That's where they are Hermetic. So it could be. So what was I saying? So she's using these while moving and travelling across the marsh to get to her son. Then I can't be bothered to read the rest of the story, but I assume she won and he's happy and everyone's lovely again. And yay, she's beaten Seth in his game and all that kind of stuff. So for me, these thought forms this discovery was very useful. So I tend to use these thought forms in a protective use. There was a very good bit of Golden Dawn. And I'm not sure. I do mention this every now and again, and I will throw this text out too. That by a spell that Dion Fortune created. Well, she said I have. I'll rewind that a bit. In the book by Dolores Ashcroft of the Ritual Magic Workbook, Dolores mentions that Dion Fortune gave her some text of a spell, which is titled the Dog of Defense. It's a protective spell. Dion apparently claimed it was for tomb protection, although not entirely convinced by that. There's not many examples of that out there. Where you create a entity, in this case, to guard a location. Now, I use that, but I use all 7 of the scorpions as protection dotted around the place. Also, I would also it goes along the lines of creating it for a year in a day, which is a more recent addition, mainly under a Wiccan thing. But I'll throw out the text at the end on that one. But I've been using this Dog of Defense spell with these thought forms as a highly effective form of protection for, well, since I found it. And it's years and years and years. So that's really where my main form of thought form use goes now. Mainly because as I've got closer to my goddess, the use of thought forms is less needed, because I'll just ask her to go and do it anyway, and if she can be bothered, she'll do it and tell me. I don't go with all the faff of creating thought forms as much now. I don't use these scorpions for sort of tasks to go off and do things anymore, but that's just what I've just not done. I'd rather ask my goddess. Um, so, well, I've got through quite a bit there. Of course, the text is quite extensive. Oh, we're 45 minutes already gone. Okay, let's. Has anyone got any questions on thought forms at this point? Okay, everyone's being quiet. May or may not be. Oh, someone's got a quick one. Then I'll move on to more examples. Well, what? You want more examples for me or any other? Oh, for creating. Pretty much, if you look at any classical bit of oh, thought form gone rogue as well. Okay, let's go for the purposes of create examples for creation. If we get to do familiars, we'll get to familiars, but I'm willing to overrun this. So, examples. Right. Well, any book on magical any spellcrafting book will usually go along the lines of I want to cast a spell for knowing things, gaining wealth, finding things, affecting someone, and so on. It's whatever use you want to put it to is viable for a thought form. The only thing you probably got to lack is that physical interaction can be limited or mostly non-existent unless you create. Well, there's the classic form of thought form. Well, I wouldn't say it's a proper thought form. Is a golem, or although that's not essentially a proper thought form in that it's a physical thing, but it has a extension. It's a spirit trapped within a physical thing, and it's causing animation. Now, I'm not aware of any modern golems walking around. I think we'd probably know that by now if there was any. It'd be another Godzilla's gone loose or something. But so interaction can be limiting. You could. I've done a fair bit of sort of etheric projection where it's not the same as. Oh, I'm not even going to say that, especially not out loud. I don't want to get any bad email. Where was I going with this? Yeah, you're from the US. Fair enough. Where was I going? Oh yes, etheric projection. Now, with that, unlike astral or mental projection, where you are going to planar kind of stuff, from what I understand and use of etheric projection is that term is functioning within this physical realm, this physical plane, so that it's sort of remote viewing is another form of saying etheric projection. Now, to some extent, you can have interaction with the physical reality somewhere else on the planet, and it depends on how much you want to put into that. Obviously, if you're doing a thought form and sending it out, you probably may need to give it a bit more of your. Oh, okay. Thank you. um. Right. What? Yes, putting a little bit more energy into the projection, into the entity, but then you don't want to do too much. So I would say anything to do with physical interaction is tricky. To some extent, that's actually on a benefit because it should pass through physical material to get to where you need. But to actually interact, then you are limited. So everything else but that. The other question about rogue thought forms. I can't remember if I've had any. I don't have any documented, but that's not to say I didn't experience any. I just don't have any memory of anything that sticks to mind that I know went wrong. You see, as I say, my changes of thought form use have moved. Um, Now, in the last session on evocation, I think a few of you were here, but not all of you. Now, yes, that's to bind. You could restrict it to control it, like this book, this Michael Cunningham book. His view was that you bind it to the stone so that it's anchored there. So if you do need to do anything with it to destroy it, you just destroy the stone, and that will destroy its home and destroy its existence. But then, as I say, I don't like them lurking around. So I've never that's probably why I've not had a bad experience in that I destroy them after use as soon as, so they don't get the chance to evolve and cause any mischief. But as I was saying, yes, in the last session on evocation, where I explained a really bad evocation going wrong, that sort of tied in around the same time as a change to my thought form use, because I was doing stupid things, and like with the evocation and probably with thought forms, and messing around with them and experimenting in an uncontrolled way. When my goddess eventually decided to draw a line under this and say, you're in danger, stop this, I will be controlling things from now on, I think that was the end of thought forms as a plaything, as an experiment. And so my thought forms sort of died away until I found these several scorpions of the goddess to use. So I don't have an example of one going wrong. I think that particular book has, and I'm not sure, I haven't read it yet. The Dolores book probably has. It's quite thicker than the Michael Cunningham one is not particularly thick. Oh yeah, that's quite small. That is only 140 pages. I think the Dolores ones, and this book is like A5 size, whereas the Dolores one is A4 size, or near enough, and it's about twice the thickness. So I'm looking forward to reading that one. I might learn something new. But yeah, so no, I don't have any examples of them going wrong, but there's probably plenty of them out there. Okay, then you've got thought forms an extension of your unconsciousness. How is it to control our own thoughts? Yes. Now this was another aspect, and I think this book, the Michael Cunningham book, mentions it, and I've picked up on it in a few other places. When you destroy the entity, hopefully the energy will come back to you. But the book mentions that they think some of it doesn't, and that it sort of stays floating around, and that should there be a sort of repeated use of these techniques, that there's a huge entity that forms as a result of the remaining energy left, and that goes off rogue. But from your unconsciousness, this is a different side. And this is why when you go through the process of creating a thought form, it's a really good idea to be a ritualistic process. Because if it's ritualistic, then you are going through a process where you are consciously creating it. If it was thought forms as a off the cuff request, oh, I want one now to go off and do something with no thought, you could be doing that unconsciously, because you could say, oh, I want that. Well, that's a bit of desire, that's intent. Could a thought form suddenly erupt from you because an unconscious desire, and it goes off to achieve what it is you need? But that was something you didn't actually need. It was just a, oh well, would like that. So this is where it gets dangerous. And okay, I wouldn't say dangerous. It gets a little bit risky. You need to make sure it's always a controlled thing, because if it's unconscious, that could create a rogue one. Because if you're not aware you've created it and it's not destroyed, it's lurking with things to do, with things not to do, twiddling its thumb, lurking. Be careful of what you wish for, because it might just happen. Yep, I I stick to that quite a bit. I actually mentioned that in quite a few of my sessions on visualization. Is it possible for a thought form to retrieve an item after it's been found, or simply act as eyes? Well, this still goes with this thing of matter interaction. It's not. I think if someone was to see a book floating down the hallway because that's what you asked it for, they might freak, and I think most of us would accept that magic doesn't work along those lines really in the real world. It's not the way of Harry Potter. It's been done. Cool. Not to say that it's not possible. Anything is possible. Oh, go on, do some quantum physics. A really hard one. And then I think if anybody wants me to go through the familiar stuff, it is I will, but I'm happy to keep on this subject because it's fun, and of course you can all read. Well, yeah, everything, we are made of the stuff of stars. Matter is energy, so the atoms within my body have existed in, well, not the exact atoms, but the energy in those atoms have existed since the dawn of time. Same with everything around. So condense your thought form's energy to the level of matter. Okay, yes. That's really yeah. Okay, I see where you're going with this. Because if the entity is passing through matter, then it's sort of like cosmic ray, neutrino kind of level of non-physical interaction. Getting it down to a heavier particle so that it will interact. Yes, not something I've played with, but it could well be something to do. Well, for example, the those thought form scorpions that I've used in protection. There is one example, and you can hear this probably coming before I mention this to while I've been writing my book. Yes, I've said it, and we've almost got to the hour before I've said it as well. I found some notes I made on a particular casting of this dogged defense spell, where I placed the scorpions in my back garden in my previous house, and I had view out the garden, and I could see at the same time a cat walking through the garden. Whoa, whoa, Mike. Hang on a sec. It's a bit screechy, the mic. Sorry. It is redlining. It's topping out. That's okay. It's a pain. So yes, I placed these a couple of them. Oh dear, that's not helpful. That's okay. Yeah, okay. Yes, I cast these. I've cast two of the scorpions into the back garden, and I was watching a cat walk through the garden, and it approached within about a foot of where I placed this scorpion, and it actually stopped and walked around it, which was very odd. It's the only example I've got where I've seen some kind of physical. Well, I wouldn't say it was a physical interaction. It was as if it was physically there. It sensed it. I don't know, but to walk around it, it was very disconcerting, even for me. And I've been doing this for a long time. I thought, that's interesting. I've not had any other experiences like that. Um, so I think if you could condense it to make it interact, then it's possible. I'm not going to say it's not. Anything is possible. Um, right. Well, as as what happened at the Artemis Gathering, I've only done the first topic of the three, and as usual, we've run out of time. But I will keep going. Now, what I will do, I will just throw out the notes of this session to everybody here, just in case you do actually have to pop off. But thank you for coming if you do have to run. Session, as I say, session 11 is in 2 weeks on healing, and that will be the last one of the series, and then I will be starting again. Oh, I'll throw out this dogged defense spell too. You are all welcome to hang around, and I will continue going if you want to talk about familiars as well. Oh, that was a bit weird. The curtain just shook. Interesting. There's absolutely no reason for that to be shaking. Awesome. I like that. Okay, I can sense something. What's here? Okay, God, this is getting a little bit wound up about something. Okay, let me just find this dogged defense spell, and I will throw that over. Come on, find it. Oh, goody. It's not a problem. What else have we got to do? Right. Yeah, we'll continue with, and I'm still recording, so for those that are going to be listening to the podcast, they'll get the extra bits that they actually probably did want to hear. So familiars. Now, something I've not really looked at in depth. I've not actually had a familiar. But this classification of of helpers is very narrowly defined from the digging I have done, and I would say it's not extensive digging. I don't have many books on the subject, so I've had to look around. So the classical view of familiars in a Western magical tradition, I would say, is probably narrowly defined, in particular from medieval texts of the classic witch trials and so on, and the classic witch's familiar of usually a cat or a bird or a rat or those kinds. Now, obviously, the use of familiars in those contexts of those medieval texts are of good, well, mostly bad, but we'll ignore that. So, familiars in themselves, there is a common running theme I found. They are by mutual agreement entered into mutually into the agreement to be work together. Sometimes by chance encounter, which sounds a little bit like totem animals to me in a shamanistic process. Um, or the connection could be a more formal one. Either it presents itself out by your back door and you say, "Oh, we'll work together for a while." Um, Now, there are other forms and other references that do go back to antiquity that I have found, where people have worked with spirit animals in a not as in a spiritual journey, visualization journey, but in a helpful way. Bit like, my 7 scorpion servants. You could say they could be a form of familiar. Now, this also comes into thing is that some familiars I found are physical, as in an animal that you have as a pet, or in a visualized disembodied entity like my scorpions again. So in a way you could say that mine could be familiars, although I don't enter in an agreement with them for us to be mutually on the same task doing stuff. They just come when I need them, and we just do the bidding of the goddess, and that's about it. But I would say that I've just lost the whole point in text again. So if I can find myself. So yes, I would say probably the classical form of physical animal could probably be more explained that in those times, medieval Europe in particular, everybody probably had an animal and it was useful, like a cat, good rat catcher, job done, serves more than one purpose, and it's a good way to hide your craft. Modern use, they tend to be of another narrowly defined set of animals, usually something very personal. Cats, rodents, in a few example, birds. Now, that seems to indicate that the use of the familiar is a localized thing. Owl. Cool. So, it's just another, like with the thought forms, where I'm using it to retrieve information, that would be over possibly some considerable distance, whereas familiars appear to be very local within their natural sort of range. So if you've got a cat or a rodent, then the range is probably only within your local area. If you've got a bird, then you might be going use for retrieving of information via the familiar over a larger distance. But it's a very interesting thing. And some of the uses probably will make use of its natural instincts and its skills. If it's got a decent hunting skill, or if it's intelligent enough to do things for you, then it will. And of course, there's the very useful therapeutic aspect of having a familiar as a physical one. Like I say, I've not really experienced this, so not quite my area. Now, what also I did find in my nosing around, I wouldn't say it's research because I didn't have the materials, but there seems to be a common theme on, like the thought forms, there's the bond. Now, this bond between the practitioner and the familiar, I'm not sure whether it's along the same lines as the one between the magician and the thought form, that there's an exchange or extension of the magician's energy or life force or will into the other thing. So, for example, I've got examples of where the familiar dies or suffers injury, and the person, the practitioner who's using the familiar or has this agreement with the familiar, has suffered some injury at the same time. So, does that mean the link is because there's some element of the practitioner's life force within the animal that suffers the damage and that reflects back? Or is the link because there's a symbiotic, some kind of sympathetic link between the two? Yeah, that's a good thing. Familiar as a companion, and if it dies, it comes back as another form. Then that's a sort of continual contract, and more like possession. Ah, yeah, that's another aspect of another view to take. I would say possessing the animal. Well, this is it. We don't know whether this sort of contract between you and a familiar, it's an agreement to share. Now, the connection I have with my goddess is a form of sort of not quite possession as such. Possession seems to have some of these negative connotations about it, but it's a mutual linking. My goddess is always with me in the head. I have voices in my head, and that's very funny. And but yes, I know it's very funny. Um, yeah, we all have voices. This one's a particularly nagging one, but um, the idea here is that I've allowed her in. It's sort of like channeling, kind of mediumship kind of stuff. Possessions are some kind of form of channeling. So, um, so for me, she's sort of piggybacking off of me, and that's there. But so as you're saying, with possession of the animal, that kind of agreement, that contract, could be a similar thing. The animal is agreeing to become a channel for you, so that you are, and likewise, it's a mutual channel between the pair of you. So it's, I would say that that's a possibility, a way to a view that this is how the contract is. It's a mutual form of two-way channel. You are gaining its view of the world, and it's how it needs things, and likewise, it's probably you're helping it along the way. Now, another way I see familiars. Now, this is, I've not found any reference for this, and let's see what the view is, especially for you, those of you who have familiars. Now, in your day-to-day connection with your deity, I would suggest also that the familiar is a sort of aspect of your deity. Now, your deity may not want to be giving you full attention constantly, like mine does, and you're lucky, because it gets annoying. But as a day-to-day helper, and this is what I said at the start, these forms of little helpers are more of the day-to-day kind of routine, not as in the let's do a full-blown ritual and talk with our divine being and get some help. These things are for helping for day-to-day. Now, perhaps the familiar is just a little bit of a ear that your deity has on your day-to-day activity, and that the it's there just to give you the little nudge now and again to help you along the way, without you having to think, well, actually for this I need to talk with the goddess and I'll just do this ritual and do it. Whereas actually it's easier if I just ask my familiar. It's more personal, more mundane, and I'm not bothering the deity, but actually is your deity, but just a slight, okay, thank you, Joy, for coming along. I'll catch up with you later. Night night. So I don't know if that's a way to view familiars. I probably ran out of more things to talk about on familiars because I've not really looked at those much more. But okay, and my throat's starting to dry out a bit. So I think I'll jump straight to the summary. So, which is best? Well, it's, as always, finding the correct tool for the job. Whatever works. I tend to, as I say, not tend to use familiars. I don't ever use those. Thought forms now and again, and they become less but more specific to a certain type of thought form. I'm sure over time it will change again, so we will see. Instinct is the way to go, and there's obviously overlap, as I mentioned, with these scorpions. They could be seen as advanced thought forms, or they could be non-corporeal familiars, depends on how you term them. Perhaps that's what familiars are. They are just thought forms. Who knows? I don't know. Just have a play. That's usually my thing with thought forms and anything like this. Experiment. I've done some stupid things, and I'm still here. So unless, okay, it's probably, well, yeah, same words for different things. That's quite likely what's happened. So, as usual, as long as it's common sense, play with it. If there's caution and you're uncertain, just throw a bit of protective stuff up, or just tread very carefully and keep it simple. I think that's probably it. I'll run out of things to say, which is bizarre. Das asked that is done for the good and good of all things, but doing magic. Yep, that's always a good thing. It don't hurt. But so, oh, I'm not even going to answer that. I have criticisms that I've run out of things to say. It's bizarre. Yes, okay, right. I am now going to stop recording, and